What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Sector for Nerds, and welcome to another episode of Star Wars: The Clone Wars Retro Discussions. Today I'm here to have a chat with you guys about Season 3, Episode 5, Corruption. This episode was directed by Giancarlo Volpe and written by Cameron Lidvack. The cookie for this episode: the challenge of hope is to overcome corruption. Ain't that the freaking truth? Guys, I have been waiting so long to chat with you guys about this episode, because if there was ever an episode of the Clone Wars that we should be taking life lessons from, especially in the mid-2020s, like especially today, the number one episode I would point people to look at is this episode. And we're gonna get into it all, but first up, you guys, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. I'm always putting out multiple videos a week. We're always trying to do, a live stream once a week if we can. Sometimes I got YouTube shorts going up here and there, so you definitely don't want to miss out on all the content that I've got for you guys. So subscribe. All right, you guys, and without any further ado, intro guy, let us know what's going down in this episode. Desperate times on Mandalore. Having won neutrality for the Mandalorian system, Duchess Satine now finds herself an outsider with very little aid to her people. Supplies are impossible to come by, except on the black market. As a result, the Duchess faces a world consumed by greed. Hoping to alleviate some of the tension rising in the capital city of Sindari, Satine has called upon her friend, PADMÉ Amidala, to make a diplomatic visit. So yeah, you guys, this is the PADMÉ and Satine team-up episode. I remember, you guys, when I was little, after Season 2, I was like, man, when are we going back to Mandalore? When are we getting Death Watch back? Well, I at least got one of the two here. We're back on Mandalore, but this time it's not with Obi-Wan. We've got Padmé instead. It was basically like a girls having a weekend out kind of episode. But a lot of stuff to take away from this episode. This episode and the next episode, I cannot wait to talk about, because two low-key really good episodes in this season. We start out the episode where Padmé gets welcomed to Mandalore. There's just like crowds of people there waiting to cheer, like bring her in. They're all cheering. But then there's like this dark music that, they cut to a ship and there's this like dark theme playing in the background. It's like, okay, these guys can't be a good sign, right? There are these green-looking aliens. They called Muggins, I believe. And the leader of this group ends up bribing the dock manager, or as they call him, like the customs official. But we don't know too much yet. We don't know what they're up to. But then Satine ends up getting mad at like the ruling council meeting because they start arguing with Padmé after Padmé says the Republic can help provide security. I kind of had a feeling that wasn't going to go over well, considering that Mandalore was neutral. Even one of the senators was like, it's quite hypocritical of you to come here to lecture to us about corruption when the Republic's had its own dealings with the black market. Corruption everywhere, you see. But in the next scene that we talk about, you guys, we start to figure out what it is that these guys are up to. They're unloading Slavin, which is a diluting agent, and with it, they're able to make twice as much tea at twice the profit. But it's toxic. I mean, even though the guy says, well, only if the dosage is wrong, so just get your mixture right. Like, you just knew that this wasn't going to go over well. There's also police standing there that are just letting all this happen, so these guys are just paying off everybody. We get Padmé and Satine in a dinner scene. By the way, they change clothes like 20 times in this episode. Each of them have like so many different attires that they keep, changing into. There's like their adventure attire, and then there's their, the dinner attire, and then the business attire. But during this dinner, Satine talks about, all right, enough of the dreary politic talk. Tomorrow there's a new hospital that's going to open. You and I are going to visit it tomorrow. We're going to see True Good at work. So it's like, okay, yeah, we're going to go see a new hospital open tomorrow. All right, that's interesting. I mean, you wouldn't expect I'm sure there'll probably be patients there, but you wouldn't expect it to be too overwhelming. Oh, wait, there's a bunch of children sick. Every time I watch it, just like breaks my heart seeing all these children sick. And what's at the root of it all? Corruption. And not enough people standing up to do the right thing. It's not about everybody else, it's about themselves. You're going to see how many people are affiliated with these Muggins and how many people allowed for these children to become sick. And they can sit there and try to, lie and deny about it all they want. Like, oh, I didn't want to do it. I'm sorry they're sick children. Or people that are more guilty than I am in this situation. By the way, the people that always say that there are those that are more guilty than I am, to me kind of signifies that you're also just as guilty. But anyway, back to the episode. We find out, okay, so we got to figure out what's going on with these children, right? So I guess like the main doctor that's there, he says, we've gotten reports from across the planet. This is happening everywhere. The children that are all here in this hospital all came from the same school, so we're testing their food, which is, I feel like, a logical thing to do. But it'll take time to find an antidote, but Satine rightly points out they may not have more time. So they go to Prime Minister Almec, and Almec's like, well, what if it's not a poison? Maybe it's Death Watch. And Satine points out, I don't know about that, because in the past, the Death Watch attacks have been directed at either myself or at the administration, not the children. And Almec goes, well, they are terrorists. Perhaps the senator's visit has inspired them. And he kind of like goes away and says like, I must speak with the ruling council about this. But Satine doesn't believe that Death Watch has anything to do with this. And we as the audience know, at least right now, that Death Watch has no part in this. We haven't seen them so far. I'll say this much, man. Satine's guards are so freaking badass. Like, they just have that look, man. It's, oh my gosh, these guys are so cool. But they go to the school and, they say, look, we checked all the food. Everything seems pretty regular. Like, we would have caught something with our tests. And they start talking about the drinks instead. And it's like, well, they drink fresh water. And Satine goes, no, not the water. What about those green bottled drinks? And he goes, they're not part of the school's menu, but they are allowed through an outside vendor. Which I feel like that should have been suspicious enough, which I guess it kind of was, because the one guy goes, excuse me, child, I must borrow your drink. You should thank him, child. He just saved your life. You're welcome. But this is also the moment where Satine realizes, like, this is the root to a much larger seed of corruption. But this is where they figure it out, right? Like, the tea contains slavin, it's mixing with the tea badly, and it's causing the children's illness. So then they go to the import log, and this superintendent who's there just decides to run off, like, right in front of them, like, not suspicious at all, and is like, I'm on my way to the hospital. I have to go. And then Satine's guards, shout out to Satine's guards, you guys. They were willing to risk their own lives to make sure that this dude didn't get away, because he tries to get away in his speeder, and they cut him off right before they get off the ledge. Like, they could have fallen off and died. These guys are dedicated. This is where Satine gets pissed off for like the second time in this episode. She goes, tell me what's going on here, or else my guards will not be as conversational as I am. Damn, Obi-Wan, remind me not to mess with your girl when she gets angry. And don't ever make her that angry or you're gonna be sleeping on the couch. Anakin probably knows a thing or two about that. So they interrogate the superintendent, and he's like, there are others on this operation more guilty than I am. Satine asks if Death Watch is involved, and he's like, look, I don't know. I dealt with a middleman who, works for a shipping company not too far from here. And so they go to him, and they find out that he did bribe the school official. This guy was kind of more open about the stuff that he was doing. Like, yeah, I bribed the school's official, and look, my corporate contracts protect me. I'm all good, and, I got nothing to hide here. But they find out that they are going to be bringing in another shipment tonight, so they go to the docks. And this is where Satine brings up Kenobi. Because they talk about, Padmé's time as a queen and how she dealt with similar situations like this. This is actually one of the low-key scenes I really enjoyed, because it's you're getting to see these two characters continue to bond and, relate to each other's experiences. I think it would have been interesting to see, if they would have done another Padmé and Satine episode at some point. Maybe they could have tackled the idea of Satine having feelings for Obi-Wan and Padmé being able to, relate to that, because of course she's married to Anakin. But the two end up witnessing the bribery of the customs official. So they have a chat with the police captain, and he's like, smuggling doesn't take place on my watching. And Padmé kind of smartly goes, and what about when you're not watching? And he goes, well, I'm always watching. And Satine replies, and were you watching as children were dying? Who was watching then? And she goes, if you want my respect, you're going to arrest these criminals and stop stalling. Why else would you not be down there with a patrol unit making arrests? Unless you're involved. Which, when he started talking and saying how, there's no way that anything was going on, I thought he was in on it too. There are so many people in on this plot that we don't know, what's going on anymore. We as the audience have been given a good idea, but you also have that seed of doubt. One of the lines that also stands out to me in this part of the episode is when Satine says, the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy is money. That is so freaking accurate. Because when you look at, like, the majority of people that have power, whether it be in positions of government, whether it be in corporations, it's always the people that have money. And money is a big, big root of corruption. Take notes today, kids. This is Ryan's history course on corruption. Okay, but seriously though, any like teachers out there, any like history teachers, whoever like, you know, would teach about corruption and that are also Star Wars fans, show your kids this episode. So they go to the shipping docks and they see the guards there. Satine's just like, did you order them here? And the captain goes, Duchess, I've been with you the whole time. And then in my mind, I'm like, yeah, but I mean, like, you could have ordered them there. Like, we saw them there earlier in the episode. You could have ordered them there before you went to talk with them. So I don't think that means anything. But the part where I kind of started to believe him is when he actually, like, defends Satine from getting attacked by the two guards.
Guards, let us into this warehouse.
We're under strict orders not to let anyone in.
Do you know who this is?
I command you, open these doors.
Arrest them!
The captain says, arrest them. Wait, I'm sorry, Captain. You're saying it wrong. It's pronounced...
Arrest her!
You know, since I'm teaching a course on corruption, maybe I should have a course on Terra Sanube as well. Oh, man. And then we get the battle at the shipping docks. And this is where we really start to see Satine's guards in action and how freaking cool these guys are. Because the minute that the bad guys open fire, they immediately shield our two girls, putting their own lives at stake to protect them. And then when the captain goes down, they, you know, make sure to defend him as well. I will say, I'm glad that that guy had, like, the Death Watch blaster that we see in season 2, and it has that same sound effect, that dun, 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 dun. I love that. But then Padme picks up the blaster. And this, what we're about to talk right here, is going to follow up on a point that my friend DJ brought up last week when we were talking about the Sphere of Influence episode. And that's that I feel like we sometimes underestimate how some of these senators can actually prove themselves to be pretty good warriors. Because Padme picks up that gun and she starts taking out a lot of the smugglers that are in there. We know this character. We've seen her throughout the Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones get herself into many different situations where she had to fight in battles. She was in the freaking Battle of Geonosis with all of the Jedi. Like, if anybody knows how to defend herself, it's Padme. And it's not like you saw Satine picking up a blaster and start all of a sudden just shooting all these random people. And it's like, well, hold on a second. We've never really seen this from her before. Like, yeah, we saw her with a little, like, deactivator blaster thing. But, like, I don't know, going up against, like, people, I think it's a bit different. And Satine then orders for the warehouse that they were fighting in to be burned down. And even the captain was like, wait a second, hold on, like, there's evidence here that we can use. And Satine was just done with it. Like, she didn't even let him finish. She's like, burn it down or I will consider you a part of this conspiracy, Captain. I love the one guard, like, on her right as well, like, kind of just stomped his staff into the ground like he was ready to arrest him. I love these guards. Where were these guys during the Siege of Mandalore? So then they go to Almec and explain the situation, and Almec says, oh, I'm so glad that this is over. And Satine very rightfully points out, no, this is far from over. Look at all the corruption that I witnessed here today. Payoffs, police unwilling to comply, my government fooled, children being sick. All of that because our government could not be counted on. Again, life lessons to take from this episode today, folks. And we're going to get into it more next week as well, but it is as Ahsoka says next week, it is every citizen's responsibility to hold their leaders accountable, to hold their governments accountable. I don't always like to bring up real world stuff when talking about these episodes, but it feels like with this week's episode, it's impossible to ignore, especially with all of the corruption that does go on in our society today. And this is where, you know, I challenge everybody to be careful. Because if you're not, the sick children that you saw in this episode, that could potentially be your kids. Now, that does not just mean physical sickness. We're talking about things as well that can affect them mentally. The things that are being input into their heads. That's why, man, like, if I ever become a father someday, like, I'm gonna be very, cautious and very particular about the stuff that my children do and the content that they consume. Because whether you see it or not, there are people out there that are trying to get your children to think a certain way, to get them to act a certain way, to eventually be brought up in the machine that is corruption. Yeah, just little stuff to keep in mind here and there. Oh, and you know what? One more thing. For everyone that believes that Star Wars has gone woke, for people who look at the Acolyte, let's just say, and see the woke agenda that's in there, for people who think that they are solely focused on female characters and no character, like no arcs, no story, just diversity and representation. This episode right here, this is how you do female characters right. A character that has been built through the prequel movies, and a character that has been slowly but surely been built up in the Clone Wars. Characters that we actually have investment in and that we care about. This is how you do it. I would have been really curious to see, because I really wasn't on social media much back when, the Clone Wars was first starting out, because I would have been like, 10, 11 years old, something like that around the time of season 3. I wouldn't have had a phone yet, which is crazy because now in today's society, like there's like 10-year-olds all the time with phones. There's children that are like 6 or 7 years old that have phones. It's insane. But I wonder what like the promotional stuff for season 3 was at this time. Because I could see it being something a little bit like this. And I don't know this for a fact, but I could see it being a little something like this, right? Yeah, for season 3, we've got, an episode in season 3 where, we've got a team up episode between Padmé and Satine, 2 characters that had a little bit of interaction with each other in the last Mandalorian arc that we did. We wanted to give them kind of a girls' night out story that goes wrong, exposing a big theme about corruption, where if they would have been doing that today, it would have just been like, it is revolutionary to have 2 strong, badass female characters as on screen together against those toxic men. Girls rule, boys drool. If the Acolyte promotional work was anything to go by. All right, you guys, I think I've spoken enough on this episode today. Next week, you guys, we are going to be talking about season 3, episode 6, The Academy, part 2 of this arc. Satine mentions at the end of this episode that, perhaps if there was a Jedi working undercover at the Academy, that it would do us some good to make sure that our children are not being corrupted. And I remember sitting there at the time thinking, what if it was Ahsoka that was the teacher? And that's what we got. So yeah, I can't wait to talk about next week's episode as well, you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, share this video with others to help support the channel, and I will see you guys next time.
I'm getting you out of here.
Ahsoka, it's a trap.
I see you found the Duchess, youngling. You may stop your play acting now, Sergeant.
Prime Minister, sir.
Using a Jedi mind trick was a very poor decision. My guards have been trained to resist such archaic magic.